And I think it'd be great if we start off with people just giving some responses to what they've discovered by listening to you, and then go on to questions, because things go by so fast. It's good to get reminded. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Good. So anyone, if you, I think you could feel free to unmute or put something in the chat. First of all, what is it that, how should I name you? Rikki?
Oh, Rikki is fine. Sorry.
Rikki, okay, from Rikki and from Rikki and Sanjit's presentation, what are some things that stood out for you, that really surprised you and stays with you now, that you're enlightened about? Anyone? Put it in the chat or unmute yourself and say something.
I was deeply saddened to realize how much the land councils are caught up in the commercial system and degrading humanity by what is happening in the financial dependence. So that was enlightening, but very sad.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'd agree that that split of revenue. I'm if something's wrong, chase the money, always chase the money guy. That split between the land councils themselves and the actual original owners with the revenue is a big thing, and kind of something that would be great to get an overall kind of impression about is I can see how a Western view in those land councils has allowed them to justify this by saying, well, what we want to do is make sure that these things ongoing are self-supporting and that we can be around forever and continue to get revenue in and then use that in other areas, blah, 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 blah. I could just see how it's been justified in a Western sense, so that it becomes a profit center or a pays its own way rather than being a cost center, which of course now I believe it should be. So I'm wondering if that is the case, if that's the justification used, and if we can't all push to say, look, if it costs money, it costs money. It's the right thing. We do this because it's the right thing to do, not because it's a good business.
Would you like to say something, Rikki or Paul?
No.
Yeah. Okay. No, I agree. I think, the whole starting point of the conversation is wrong. If you want to hand back country to people, you should let them decide what they do. And it's not like Indigenous people are stupid. They managed to look after country for a very long time. And it's not like they're regressive either. They understand what's happening around them. They don't want to be stuck in the past, if you want to conceptualize it that way. A lot of Indigenous people are, progressive in industry, in collaborating with them. Projects that are progressive in terms of our future for everyone. And it's just because, like I said, the starting point has been a very paternalistic one. And now it's been corrupted by commercialism. The only way back is to start it all again. Can't fix what's there now.
Right. Well, I just want to pass on that Rikki had to leave, but she's really very thankful for all the insights you've given her. Michelle, how frightening it is to see how powerful these fracking companies are, and they're being supplied with lots of money by our government out of taxpayers' money. I was especially, I might just say something really, all the other things, especially this thing about you not getting any, I always assumed that, getting what is it, land rights meant you had the land. And it's how I can't remember ever hearing the kind of things you've been saying about how the money's divvied up, how the decisions are made. I hear echoes here and there, but this has been a really wonderful, well, not wonderful, well, it's a very enlightening presentation that will stay with me for a long time.
And we, discussing, when land councils even discussed our land, we've heard, because we're not invited to those meetings, we've heard that land council have gone and they've taken these pastoralists with them to these meetings, and the pastoralists have thrown 20 grand on the table, and they said, look, if you don't make this decision today, this 20 grand walks with us. Wow. Now, you put that kind of money in front of people living in remote communities. This is where land council are using people's poverty against them. They know that these people can't afford to buy food every day for their kids, that they can't afford to clothe their children, that they can't afford to even, buy power cards to power their houses. So they do that on purpose. And yet also then we've got this big mine down the road. Now, Borroloola should not want for anything with the amount of money that mine makes. We shouldn't need to fly our people out to Darwin. We shouldn't need to send our kids away to boarding schools to get a good education. Yet we're constantly being forgotten, and people want to talk about closing the gap. Well, this is a way to close the gap. Stop funding your shareholders. Stop paying off all your shareholders and paying off people in government, and start looking after people on country.
I'd like to add something here.
Sure.
Look, the problems go back to the structure of the Land Rights Act in the first place, which you were suggesting. It's a really weird structure. It's three-way split between the traditional owners, who's supposed to make the decisions, and the Land Council is supposed to then instruct the land trusts to execute the decisions. So the land trusts, so people actually have the title, but it's a bare trust. They have no capability as such. They have to act on the instructions of the Land Council, which has to find out what the traditional owners want. So right from the start, it's put the land councils in the middle between the various parties. The actual traditional owners have no legal capability as such. And of course, the power corrupts. And as you can see from the start, the land councils were in a position, even with the best of intentions, they had too much power. And on paper, it sounded all nice theoretically, and all that sort of thing is going to be a shield for the traditional owners. So just put them in the middle, and to put the traditional owners with no legal power. So it goes back to the structure of the Act. And there have been problems between land councils and traditional owners going right back to the very early days. And certainly in Central Australia, I know that's the case. And there's certainly plenty of people in Central Australia who won't have anything to do with the land council there, despite the fact, sometimes the land council has done good things, whatever, but it's in the structure of the Act. It's caused problems the whole way. People try to break away from the land councils and have been thwarted each turn. So it's a problem, and this is a structural institutional problem right in the structure of the Land Rights Act. And it's as you said, it's a paternalistic arrangement, and it's not working.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Anything
Hi
else?
guys.
Yes,
Can you
go
hear me?
ahead.
Hi guys. Thank you very much for your presentation. It's Luca here from Sydney. I believe Leichhardt was one Gulf country once upon a time. I mean, it's more a reflection, and given the fact that you've been to COP, there's a very riveting press conference made by Rupert Reeve of Extinction Rebellion right at the end of COP, where he's saying there's probably time to take our agency back because no one is going to come and help us. Nobody's going to come and rescue us. And obviously was referring to the inactivity of politicians that have been getting worse and worse and worse throughout time. So I'm wondering, and this is not to diminish your effort in writing letters, where your efforts, all efforts should be more in uniting the people, leaving these politicians back to do what they want to do, and bring back the agency, i.e. organize ourselves regardless of what they're doing, because they are not going to come and rescue or rescue us or rescue anybody up until COP. It's got 500 delegates of oil companies lobbying there, which were more than the all South, global South delegates combined. I mean, there's a lost battle there. So it's probably an invitation just to go, look, forget about politics. Let's just organize ourselves and do something about it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Luca. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
So absolutely. And I think for us, us being able to, first of all, get our story out there, that's been one of the struggles to, let people know this is happening. We've approached multiple, news outlets, I suppose you'd say, to try and share our story. But it's only been up until more recently when we've, because of the fracking, that we've been able to, that people have started to approach us, because both of us have been working against, I suppose you'd say, against NLC for the last 15 years, and no one wants to really touch NLC because, like we've said, they're a power unto themselves. No one wants to go there because they do have a lot of power.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wonder, have you tried approaching the conversation? They put up a lot of articles. It's an Australian group, and I've seen a lot of good articles. They've had a lot on The Voice and on Native Title and various other things. And just to lay it out, not to sort of make statements about the Northern Land Council that might get you into trouble, but just to say what the structure is, because we don't know that. I've been involved with these things for over 20 years in Australia, and I didn't know those things. So just to lay out, this is the structure, this is how it works. So to let people know what's the situation and what you have to fight with, and how that affects you in terms of the pastoralists, in terms of the rural MacArthur River, because that would be going on in all those places. Okay, excuse me. Yeah, so I'd encourage you to take a look at that and see, because you're very articulate. And I'm sure that you could write an article that they'd be happy to put on.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can I just add something to what Lucas said? So I agree completely, and we agree completely that the people power still exists, and that our government is meant to be of the people, for the people, and yet they're acting for themselves. Because after 2 or 3 terms in government, you get your pension for life, or you go into private industry like a lot of them do. And so in Australia, like lots of countries that have a democratic process and feel like they have lots of rights, I think a lot of people have forgotten what it's like not to have rights, or have never known that to be a reality for themselves. And it will take a major war, or no one foresees an invasion of Australia, but something like that to make people realize what it's like to lose your country or to fear it. So there's great political apathy. Like you said, there's lots of good people in the country who make the right decisions given the opportunity, but there's a great political apathy in most democratic countries because they don't know what it's like. And so, like I said, the key thing is to increase awareness of the issues, and to increase people's awareness of their own political power. Like I said, we can't do this alone. I mean, Rikki and I were both very private people and come from very private families. And, we've never been on a radio show or TV show or a podcast or anything ever prior to the last 12 months. But we realized, like I said, we can't do this alone. We've been fighting. I mean, her family's been fighting, before, I was born, for their rights, and nothing has happened, like I said. So we need to work together to solve all of our problems together. And we need to, like Lucas said, reinvest in our own power and work together. Thank you.
Also, there's another consideration. There's a strong link with the problems that you're having, with the problems that we all facing, which is environmental changes. Yeah. And you're talking about war, where there's a war that is undergoing, and it's Mother Earth against humanity, that is waged war, and the war has started with COVID. And that is it's not a war as in like armamental war, but we got to a stage where country will be lost and power will be lost by people because Mother Earth is rebelling against us. And I don't think it's going to be long until people will find themselves with no land and no power, nothing, because, environmental disasters, some scientists are baffled why we're still here. Some scientists are baffled why still here. you know, and permafrost is gone and all of that. I mean, I don't want to get into environmental things, but one question I wanted to ask, to your knowledge, those lands that have been grazed all this time, actually become greener, drier, or there's been no change in there?
So our sections of our land have been overgrazed, and because the cattle actually do a lot of damage to country. So, you know, when they eat, they actually pull up the grass roots. So you've got all that desecration of the grass, and also they then damage with the land with the soil when they're walking. So it actually becomes drier. And I've noticed a change in our land just in the last 5 years that, you know, we're seeing, you know, where we had plains, we've got less bird life, less turkeys, you know, there's soil erosion, the water's not being held onto by country.
I had no doubt about that. That's why I asked the question. Yeah.
And that's just with the overgrazing with cattle.
And that's lethal. That's really lethal for the land. I mean, the topsoil is gone. That's what it means. Topsoil is gone from the land.
Right.
And, you know, all those seeds have been, well, that, you know, it's been, yes, desecrated, sorry.
Rikki, could I ask you,
yeah,
and this is a personal thing you don't have to answer, about your support for the Uluru Statement from the Heart, and a kind of bigger question, which would be, there are so many difficult issues surrounding Indigenous Australians that we're trying to get support for. Is ultimately the big message that if you support the Uluru Statement from the Heart and there is a properly enshrined voice to Parliament, that things like the Native Title Act would come before them or be punted from them to the chambers in the course of their normal work, and that ultimately the easiest way to kind of mobilise white folks, for want of a better word, towards the end goal or multiple end goals is to just concentrate on one thing, like enshrining the voice, so that then everything else can follow?
See, I understand what they're doing there, but I think the danger is that I don't like our Minister for Indigenous Affairs, Ken White. The danger is you get people who, you know, you get people like him basically in power that don't really represent, I think, what the majority would say. One,
right. So you mean in that committee or whatever you want to call it, that would become the representative voice, that you may not get the right makeup?
Yeah, and I think that's a bit dangerous. And also, it's knowing that, you know, as Indigenous Australia is made up of more than 250 different nations, that in itself, then just having one person represent those many nations, that's not clans, that's nations, because we've got multiple clans within a nation. That in itself is a problem. You know, because that's the same with a treaty. If people want a treaty, I believe you would have to go to each nation and have talks with each nation to develop a treaty for them, by them, with them. You can't just give a blanket treaty to everyone. That's like going to you know, the UK and to Europe and go, hey, you know, you're all going to speak English, you're all going to do this, and you're all going to do that, and that's that. So it can't be done.
Thanks.
I'd just like to you might like to take a look at the submissions that people made in response to that initial model that was put out in May, because I think that a lot of the things that you've just brought up, that the model and also the submissions about the model would echo very much what you've just been bringing out, and it's not a settled thing yet. The more we all speak up about the kind of thing you're saying, the better it's going to be. But I just wonder, apart from the voice, which I think could have some real benefits if it's done well, what are other structural changes that you think would make a difference in this situation? Because it's a lot more than one thing or another. So what are some things you think, if it were changed, that would make a difference?
Well, I think for us, for my family, it would be giving people the choice whether or not they would like to be involved in, you know, like have land council involved with their land management, giving us, first of all, giving us a choice.
Yeah.
That would be one. What do you reckon?
Yeah, no, I mean, the only thing I was going to suggest was because decisions are made politically, I guess, it's about political power. And so understanding that we all need to work together, because it's not about Indigenous people. Like, we have Indigenous politicians now. So the Greens have a significant number. They've got 2 in the Senate. And, you know, Labor's, so the problem is within government. So even if you've got an Indigenous Affairs Minister, that has not led to anything positive, because they're governed by the party politics. And so we're not suggesting that each political party should have a greater than 50% representation of Indigenous people. 1, because that's not practical, and 2, because that's not representative of the Australian population. You know, we're all different. And so we just need to respect Indigenous rights. And so the starting point, like I said, so structural, so great political changes like that can't happen and should not happen, but is, you know, the political process that we have in Australia is really good. It's a democratic process. The problem is that we have all become disillusioned with it, and so have become disengaged, that, you know, it doesn't matter who you vote for, it's all going to end up the same. But if we educate ourselves and force our politicians to be educated and act upon that knowledge, that's the starting point.
Yeah, so like, you know, having ministers that have, you know, their like maybe a health portfolio, but they have no experience in the health field whatsoever, making decisions, you know, for hospitals, for nurses, for doctors. That's a big issue. I think, you know, and I personally think, you know, after the Prime Minister's had his little turn and goes out, you know, for retirement, you know, I believe we should be able to decide as a nation, do they really deserve their little retirement fund? You know, I think we should be looking, you know, as a nation, we should be given allowed to vote on that, whether or not we think, yeah, they've done a good job, they deserve their little retirement fund. And then I think that would lift their game a bit, you know, they'd be wanting to work a bit harder.
Well, I was really impressed that you brought in there towards the end of your initial talk about, you know, what valuing land for something other than, you know, the monetary and the resources you can extract out of it. It just seems to me that it just reinforced for me how much Indigenous people have a perspective on land that I and other people who come from a European background have been so always just heard about the resources and the money, and not about the land itself. And
can I ask you then a question? Like, if I ask you, can you describe home for me? What's home for you?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, what's home for me? Well, I mean, home for me is where I am. I mean, we have a house here, and it's and also is and I've learned to realize that, you know, like seeing the trees and the grass and the soil is kin. You know, we've had a lot of, and we've been educated a lot by the Aboriginal people who have spoken at our Building Bridges sessions over the years. And the home is actually, and it's all around here, because where I am depends on everything else doing well.
So, and a lot of people, they, you know, I'll ask that question, they'll go, you know, it's my house, it's this. When people ask me, or they ask, you know, people from remote Aboriginal communities or from remote places, home for me is, you know, when I get home, I smell, I'm at home, and I wake up the next morning and I can smell the soil. I can smell the damp rise from the soil as the earth heats up. I can smell the fire. I can smell the wood that is burning on the fire. I can go and I can walk, you know, on my country, and it's not a building. It's the trees. my sacred sites that I can go and I can physically walk amongst, that's my home. And I think, you know, a lot of people don't realize that people put value on, you know, statues, on things that are built, and land that's destroyed to, you know, you build that house on top of, you know, land that was destroyed for you to live there. Whereas for me, my home is that country. It's not in a house, it's that place. So yeah, I suppose it's different things when you talk to people, but yeah.
Yeah, and once it's destroyed, you're forever homeless.
Gone. Yeah. Well, that's very valuable perspective, and thank you so much for bringing that out. I think we'll all remember that. So is there anything else people would like? Oh, sorry, did you want to say something?
Oh, sorry, no, it's, I think, Mike, do you have your hand up? Sorry, I just noticed a little hand.
Oh, yes.
Oh, sorry, I didn't have it. That was from before, so I'll put it down. But I do have a question about that ownership thing, which is, I guess, the other thing, learning a little bit of the Wiradjuri language from where I'm around. I heard lots of people going, so when you turn a tree into a table, it's still called tree. I guess that's because you didn't have tables. And I thought, it's actually kind of really deep in that whatever that thing was that the earth provided remains that thing. It's like remembering that that was a tree, that table was a tree, and someone had to cut it down and use it, and always remembering the origins of things, which I think speaks to where your home is and how everything has a cost. Everything has a cost.
Yeah, sometimes too that you know, I don't think people realize the more people take, you know, more you know, not you as in you, but you know, the more that someone takes, it means less for someone else. And we've all got to start realizing that, you know, that we're taking away from other people.
Except money, of course, which we can which we can print. You don't actually have to dig up the earth to make it.
I won't let you off in the, what is it called, where they make the money? Printing money.
Okay, any other, I don't see anything else in the chat. So is there someone else like to add what they've discovered or have another question?
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
How can we encourage mainstream Australians to care enough about First Nations people's rights and to protect country that they would take action? What could we do to encourage them to what to do? How to support and campaign against fracking in Beetaloo and support a campaign against what's happening with the Megasa River mine and the threats to further destruction of sacred sites? Thank you.
Sorry, I think first of all, I think, you know, it starts with you guys. You're just being here, just listening to us. I think it's a huge step, because, you know, it's people like you that go out and go, well, you know, we've heard traditional owners say this and this, and you know what, you know, you might have heard and it might not necessarily be true, you know. So I think first of all, it starts doing this kind of thing where we get to talk and have open, honest discussions about things, where people can ask even, you know, the hard questions, because I think if you genuinely don't know, how else are you going to know if you don't ask? If you don't, you know, if you haven't been given an opportunity to sit down and have a really good, you know, deep and meaningful conversation about these things. So I think that's one way and the start of how we change what's happening in Australia. So I think once people start changing, you know, that mindset of me, you know, what you've done today, you've come here out of your own time and you've sat and you've spoken to us, and we've all engaged in this conversation. And so, sorry. I think that's the first step. So
and the only thing I'd add is, in terms of ongoing steps, so of course you can't meet with every traditional owner or traditional owner group to inform yourself. So that's where organizations like Get Up and Seed, which aren't set up by a federal government body, but are representative of Indigenous people, can bring all the information together for you in a digestible piece of information. So at least and then you can start to explore from there. So becoming involved with organizations that represent Indigenous people, by Indigenous people, to help inform yourself about the issues. And then the most important, because like I said, it all comes back to politics, is to approach your local ministers, your local members, and get them to become more aware, and to make your opinions clear. And so then once I guess population-based pressures are brought to bear, then we can start to see change.
And I think too, like I think because now a lot of people have seen that Labor is not is a political party that they don't want to back now anymore. I think people are starting to look more at also independence. And I've seen that, there is other organizations like Climate 200 who, financially back independents that, are all for, making efforts towards climate change. So, maybe some research about around those types of people politically, and maybe, go and talk to them about, your concerns about what is happening, and how they can support, these causes as well. And, make conscious decisions. So like, I think people in Australia, I know it's hard, but, people in those mining industries, well, they need to, upskill and get out of those industries, because it's not helping their kids and their families in the long run. We've got to start making those hard decisions, and, this attitude of fast fashion as well. So, change our attitudes towards consumption, and, just seek information, I think is a good way to go about it. Oh, and also, before I forget, so we've also just started up our own organization as well. It's called Gudanji for Country, and is formed by my family, and it's for traditional owners, run by traditional owners. And what we hope to do with that is that we hope to gather as much information possible, so that so other traditional owners can go on our website when it's up and running, and they can kind of work out how they need to campaign and seek out help and information to basically do what we're doing, to spread the message of what's happening to them, and to raise issues and raise it with the rest of Australia.
Well, when the website gets up, please let us know about it, and we'll pass it around to all the people we know.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Sure. It does occur to me, I'd like to suggest to the people here, one thing I've realized is we've been doing things about contacting parliamentarians about the voice, and doing it that they really get it. Is that it works much better when Aboriginal people go, and having a team, if anyone wants to go, to if they know an Aboriginal person that would be willing to go also, because your lived experience counts a lot more than my ally. Being an ally is fine, but when the politician hears from an Aboriginal person as well, that really adds a lot to it. What do you think of that?
So, I mean, like, and I've said this to other people, people asked me questions about, how I feel about Greta and other activists, and how Greta seems to grab the spotlight wherever she goes. I mean, people like Greta, though, have lent her spotlight to, Indigenous peoples. And I think Greta is an incredibly brave and smart young person. But I feel like, yes, it's true that, you know, people like that don't have the lived experience, but we need people we need allies. We need people like you, and, you know, by people, you know, elevating us, you are also, we want to then elevate you as well. So for me, it's not about just, and I suppose that's how I've been raised. It's not just about one person, it's about all of us.
Yes.
And I've always been about, okay, if someone's willing to pull me up, well, then I'm going to also carry them when they need to be carried, because that's what we need to do. We need to carry each other to the finish line.
Right. Thank you.
I wanted to say, can I?
Go
I
ahead.
wanted to say how inspired I am by your leadership. I'm 80 years old now, and we have worked on these issues for lifelong, basically, in different countries, honestly. And I'm often getting very exhausted to see how little really changed. But to see the interconnectedness of democracy and Indigenous issues and wisdom and the environment, and how we are really now getting to the point of survival of the planet, or at least of humanity and many animals and so on, how important it is that we really connect and trust that we belong together. And there is no future for anyone without all the others. And that you are living it in the everyday. And just one more thing, I wondered if you had contact with Anne Paulina, for example, from the Fitzroy River. I forgot what the organization is called, but it's the Fitzroy River people. She is a very strong advocate for the wholeness that we need to be on about in terms of Aboriginal rights, but the land rights, the river rights, and all that. So if you don't know her yet, she would be your very strong Indigenous ally. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Maria. Honestly, what can I say? You know, you've been doing this for so long, and I'm constantly just very touched by people like yourself and honored. So, you know, thank you so much. Thank you.
One eye crying, one laughing and glad.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be able to survive this madness. But, yeah, but no, thank you so much. Thank you.
Anyone else like to say something?
Yes, I'm wondering regarding Sanjit's comment to lobby your local member of parliament. I'm wondering if you're not a resident from the Northern Territory, would that have an impact, or how would you be able to lobby local members for issues concerning the Northern Territory regarding threats to sacred sites and fracking up there?
Yes, so what I mean by that is, so local members will either be a member of a major political party or an independent, and I'm talking about at a federal level. And so they have the potential to impact legislation through being a part of that process. But more broadly, like I was saying before, so Indigenous rights are linked to everyone's rights. And so as long as we are all advocating for righteous causes, so protection of human rights, protection of the rights of people to make decisions about their country, about their place, just as it is relevant for someone in a local council in Sydney to make a decision about what's happening there, or that they don't want a uranium dump at the back of their place, right? So it's about, by supporting Indigenous rights, we're supporting everyone's rights. And so that's the value that can be gained. But more specifically with regards to Indigenous rights at a federal level, having someone who's informed and who can vote accordingly can only help the cause.
Yes. My parliamentarian is making decisions for the whole country, not just for me. And that's something they need to be aware of.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, people in government, particularly in the Liberals, I think they forget that it is a privilege to be able to represent your country. It is a privilege to be able to make decisions for, you know, people in your country, and they've forgotten that is it, that privilege. And, you know, like we've spoken before, I think it's time that we remind them that they are put in a position of privilege, and they need to, you know, be serious about that, and how they carry on in Parliament. Sometimes you look and you wonder, you know, I seriously think that, you know, a group of teenagers would do a better job than, you know, what they would be doing sometimes. But I honestly do forget. I think they forget that, you know, that what they're supposed to be doing.
Yes. Yes. Any other things people would like to bring in?
I'll sneak in at the risk of being a hog. Sneak in one more question for Rikki and Sanjit, which is the elephant in the room question. How does a white guy like me in a place like Wagga know that I'm dealing with the right Indigenous representatives? I mean, I would have gone to the Land Council, but say I knew that, you know, government issues, I can imagine at times like there is in Wilcannia, where there's a huge tension between people in substandard housing and the supposed elected people who are running that, that there'll be various groups claiming representation. And I don't understand the social and judicial structures of Aboriginal people, and they vary from clan to clan and nation to nation, I'm sure. But is there, so, you know, I'm not asking you to solve world peace. It'd be great if you had some tips for picking the right group, but is there anything that I can be aware of in my practice as a school teacher, trying to make sure that something's inclusive for kids at primary school, for instance? Who should I talk to? What stands out as a big red flag to say this person isn't representative, or what stands out as someone who is representative? How do I know? Because if you want to know who to speak to for my local council, you can look up the regulations, and there's lots of white man's law around who represents me.
I mean, I think it's a bit, I suppose it'd be difficult. I had the privilege of living in Armidale in New South Wales when I was younger. My mum is actually a school teacher, and she's just actually got her PhD in what I really don't know, because it's English something, and how the words are used in, I don't know. So, and they had their, they used to call it what's called the mission. And so I'm not sure what you have there, and I think the best way to go,
we were a settlement area, so we have lots of Indigenous folks, not just though from the Wiradjuri nation, but all these other nations neighboring that were just dragged off country and put into, you know, housing commission homes in a suburb in the middle of nowhere.
So I reckon your best bet is probably just go in and ask. If you've got Indigenous kids, maybe ask them who they reckon you'd be able to speak to, if maybe even ask their parents, and then just keep asking around for a while, and then you'll start getting the same, you know, particular names keep popping up.
Yeah. And
then you'll also hear about those people that you shouldn't talk to. Those names will pop up with, oh, don't go there, you know, you don't want to go, but go talk to this person. So I think the more Indigenous people from that particular area you ask, and you go, listen, I want to learn some, you know, X, Y, and Z. Is it okay? Who do I speak to about this? Is it okay if I learn about this? you know, you kind of, I think that's probably the,
Yeah, so I mean, I'll just briefly, so yeah, like what Rikki was saying, and like you said, Mike, it's very difficult because if you wind back 250 years and each nation existed, then, and the culture and the practices were preserved, then it would be very easy. You go to the leader, those and stuff. But and now that the water's been muddied, and now that a lot of the elders are lost and the stories are lost, and that's what the land councils and the government exploit at present, is the muddied waters, and that's how all these processes are pushed through. So the short answer is very difficult. And so like Rikki said, you just need to find the trusted community elders within the community, and that's your best bet.
And my assumption, another Wakaya assumption, of course, but my assumption that if I find the people who are most concerned about the future of kids in primary school, they're probably the ones who can speak for the community on bigger issues. Or
they'll be able to direct you to the right person. I mean, because it's, I mean, for us, like in Borroloola, it's, you know, there's 4 different clans, and then within those, I mean, 4 different nations, sorry. You know, and then you've got different clans within those nations. So, you know, it's very, you can't walk into Borroloola and go, I want to talk to someone about, you know, a really general
border rights.
Because you're going to get 4 different nations and all these different clans come in and telling you blah, 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 blah. And they'll all be right, but they'll all be right within their nation and their group. So you've got to be really particular about what you're going in for, and, you know, just be, you know, just say, you know, you really want to know how you can do this to the best of your ability, because you want to be an ally and you want to do the right thing by, you know, the nation that you're living on, because you acknowledge that, you know, this is Wiradjuri country and you want to do the right thing by that nation. And I reckon you'd probably be pretty good. You'd be right.
And also add something to it, in my little experience, that even when you find the right person, you need to put a lot of passion and time to it, because you're not going to get an answer right away, because the trust is gone. And so they will always see you as the white man that comes in asking questions because they want something from them. And they want to take away something, even the little that they got, and got them right, they're right. And so totally. You have to put a lot of patience and time and win that trust. And winning that trust ain't easy. And so you will get rejected over and over and over and over up until they know they can trust you. So good luck with it.
Thanks, Luca.
Yes, Jillian? Did you want to say something, Jillian? Okay, maybe, not sure. Jillian, you're on mute.
I know, I'm just listening very keenly. I think I might have just pressed something.
Oh, I see.
It's such an inspiring talk. I'm riveted. And such really good ideas to follow up. Thank you.
Yes. Well, it's 5:30 here. Been at it for an hour and a half. Maybe that's enough for now. Is that okay?
Yeah.
We'd just like to mention that there's a couple of things. There's one thing is that I want to make sure that everybody knows that you will both be on again on Tuesday evening at 6:30 here in Australia with Amnesty, and people will not only be able to hear more from you, but also about youth justice and on human rights. So that's being carried by Amnesty International, which is does a lot of things about awareness of all these issues for us. I'd also like to mention that Reconciliation for Western Sydney has had this series called Building Bridges for the last 22 years here in Western Sydney, and we've had people come from all over the city to have this chance to get to learn from Aboriginal people like like yourself, Tiki, and as an ally, Sanjit, about the situation and what is being done, what the creative things Aboriginal people are doing, and what needs to happen in the future, both here locally around Western Sydney and also for the country. So if you'd like, if people have left their emails on the Eventbrite, so we'll be letting you know when we do the next series of that, which will be coming up later in the year. And also, well, I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of everyone. Maybe we all take our mutes off and just say hooray or thank you or some things to let you know how much we appreciate your having been so warm and so clear and so helpful for us to understand the situation and the kind of things that need to be done. So let's all take off our mutes if we want to, and at least wave our hands and thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. You brought in our knowledge. You made us more aware. Thank you.
Oh, keep at it. Keep at it.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
guys. Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
much good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks for your generosity.
Yes.
No, thank you.
Great spirit.
Yes.
Hey, Tika,
Yes.
I asked a quick question. It's what Lucas said before about, I know there's Jumma community in southwest of Tully, but they got hurt by the caretaker. The caretaker wasn't wasn't really nice person. And from what Lucas was saying, that was from a caretaker coming and trying to change things in this community and in the Jumma community. And some of them really did not appreciate it or like it because he was a white man. A white man coming down from Cairns to change a Jumma community where there are some more, very probably about 20 or 30 houses there, but he's trying to change their ideas of how to do things, and they also have to go to the local supermarket in town and just recharge electricity with the cars.
Yeah.
Bloody hell, it's
Instead of
horrible.
listening.
Yeah, that's right, Michael. Yeah.
Hi, Tanya, by the way.
Hi, Michael. Michael and I, we're on the Raise the Rates campaign with ACOS, also Julie Collins as well. So we're trying to raise the rate for the income payments to go higher than what they are. But that's where it is shy too, but then they sometimes tend to get a little bit more, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny though too that to see that both of you know each other. So yeah. I think a lot of Indigenous people and particularly communities are used to seeing people come in. My dad, being a non-Indigenous guy, he's come up with the phrase of white plastic bags getting stuck on barbed wire fences and then eventually just blowing off back into the wind again. Like they'll stay for a little bit and then they'll go. But and I think sometimes people come with really great intentions and they mean well, but they have little understanding of what they're doing is actually really damaging, and that inflicts a lot more harm to the community rather than helping the community. So I think people need to also be aware of that, of the potential impacts that they're going to have on community.
Yeah, that's right.
Listen.
I agree. Yes, more, yeah. If I don't listen to those, even not to people, I'm also got my background with the neurological birth defect, but even with the house system and NDIS, like they don't hear my voice, but a lot of people, if they want to change, they've got to start listening so we can listen to the people from the ground to see what's happening, so then we can make the change to move forward.
Exactly. Yeah.
And someone should thank Richard for obviously looking over this. So
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. How would I possibly meet this group of people sitting in my bunker in in Wagga. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to learn.
Honestly, we feel really privileged to be able to do this, that there are people out there willing to listen and wanting to actually listen to things that are concerning us. So it is a privilege to be able to speak to people like yourselves, and we are thankful for that.
All right.
Great. I just like people to, I just saw an article today that was in that conversation that I mentioned, and it was by a couple of researchers on how much the situation and the attitude of Australians has changed over the last 20 years with regard to Aboriginal people. That far fewer people feel that the Aboriginal people are getting too much and things like that. It's gone way up towards a lot more needs to be done. I find that very encouraging, and they point out that this is not a matter of this year or last year or what party is in power, that we are waking up and we are being awakened by people like yourselves to realize what's going on and what really matters in our lives. So, and if anyone wants to see that research, just take a look at the conversation recently. There's other research of the same nature that this is on the rise, and all the efforts you're doing, both of you and all of us who are here on the screen, is having an effect.
Yeah, I think I was around for the 1967 referendum, and I remember it at church and, in the community generally. There was this extraordinary feeling of positivity that, us whiteys were suddenly, we're doing the right thing. And I think if Harold Holt hadn't have died, we might have had a different outcome long term. But it's not just this, it's all sorts of other things that we lost our way as a globe, as a community but the whole Western civilization from the 70s and Thatcher and Reagan and all that sort of stuff. We started to undo all that progress of the 60s. And I think people are waking up to that now.
The problem is that Thatcher and Reagan had destroyed the commons. They destroyed the right of people to take care of themselves.
Yes.
Right? And they say people can't take care of themselves. We need the corporation to take care of everybody. Yeah. And that's how things went wrong.
Yes. Well, you're one of those people, Luca, awakened, and along with, there's a lot of us are beginning to realize that. So,
All right, we could be here all night. I have to go and cook dinner.
Well, time to go. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Take care, guys.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Look at the Severy management of land, because that could be something for you. Perhaps bring them in, leave the grazing people to exploit, but at least manage the stock in a different way so the land doesn't get drier but greener. And best of luck.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, everyone.
Bye,
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Richard. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
See you Tuesday evening.